All right, so Auburn wins 91-77 over Ole Miss. It was very much a tale of two halves. Ole Miss had a 9-point lead at the half, 44-35. Auburn outscored them by 23 in the second half. Auburn 56 second-half points in the basketball game. They just absolutely shot it lights out. 73% in the second half from the field for Auburn. So many directions we can go. All right, so we kind of laid out the atmosphere. It was great. Looked great, sounded great, felt big in the building. By the way, fun game to call from that standpoint. I have done
a lot of dunks and alley-oops and stuff like that in the game.
Yeah, and big threes, especially in the Ole Miss in the first half, and then Auburn hit some big ones in the second half. Ole Miss got off to a fast start, a really fast start in the game, and led it they lead by 13 in the first half at one point, I think. But it felt like it should have been more.
Could have been more.
It should have and could have. Auburn turned it over a bunch in the first half. Ole Miss had some open threes that they missed. But Auburn made enough shots in the first half to just stay in it.
And rebounded. What was it, 8 off first half offensive rebounds, something like that?
And they had 3 offensive rebounds in the first half that led to made threes.
Ooh, I mean, that's just...
So Auburn did enough to stay in it, and I thought the closing sequence of the half was really big. So Ole Miss was up 12, and Auburn hit a 3 with like 11 seconds left or something like that. Maybe it was 12 seconds left. And then the ball kind of bounced away on the inbound. So clock doesn't stop after the made 3. Ball bounces away, and Ole Miss has to kind of scramble to get the ball inbounds. And so instead of having 11, 12 seconds to get it into the front court and get a pretty decent shot, they finally get the ball inbounded with 5 or 6 seconds. They get a decent look at the buzzer, but unlike the last 2 games, you remember Texas A&M Saturday ago and then against Mississippi State on Tuesday night when Ole Miss hit a 3 as time expired going into the locker room. They missed that 3 going into the locker room. And so instead of being down 12, Auburn was down 9 at the half. And there's like this psychological thing of being down single digits at the half, especially if you didn't play particularly well. And then in the second half, so there was a note, and I think we mentioned it on the broadcast, with like 4 or 5 minutes to play. Ole Miss had 4 players that had played 30 minutes or more in the game. Auburn had 9 players at that same point that had played 10 minutes or more in the game. The most minutes by any Auburn player were from Jalen Williams, and he played 27 minutes. Trey Donaldson played 25. Janai Broome played 25. Chad Baker-Mazzara played 26 in the game. Denver Jones played 26. Nobody cracked the 30-minute plateau for Auburn. But for Ole Miss, Brakefield played 32 minutes. Jalen Murray played 32 minutes. Alan Flanagan played 33 minutes. Matt Morrell played 36 minutes in the game. Ole Miss's legs looked dead. It was like Auburn ran them to death coming out of the locker room. And they just didn't have the gas in the tank at the end.
Chris Beard talked about that after the game. He said that he thought that guys were I'm paraphrasing what he said, but essentially that it looked like guys were tired and kind of feeling sorry for themselves and took plays off.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought he was diplomatic in the way that he said it after the game.
Yeah, it wasn't quite like that, but
he didn't full on throw his guys under the bus, but he said that they ran out of gas in the second half. Defensively, they were not good in the second half.
Way too many open looks.
Say again?
Way too many open looks.
Yeah. And too many open drives, uncontested drives to the basket. You had Jalen Williams at one point take a rebound on the defensive end, dribble the ball the length of the floor, and take it to the rim uncontested. Nobody cut off the ball.
Yeah.
And
they just didn't play. They didn't play in the second half they played the entire Mississippi State game with great energy. They played the first half with great energy. The energy was not there in the second half for Ole Miss. So.
It looks like it's either poor communication or something on defensive rotations. It looks like often Auburn was able to get them like kind of in scramble mode where guys didn't know who or when to close out and kind of got them out of position, leading to those open looks. I don't know if it's a lack of communication or what, but too often you would have somebody that would get caught up underneath the basket and the guy he was guarding was in the corner for a wide open three and things like that shouldn't happen. But it's all-encompassing.
Ole Miss was without Jamarian Sharp. Not that he gives you a ton of minutes, but if he gives you somewhere in the 8 to 12 minutes range, then that's a few less minutes for Moussa Cisse, who played his best game of the year. But Ole Miss also didn't have the rim protection. They had some blocks early in the ball game. They finished the game, though, with 6 blocks, which was the same number that Auburn has. And that's two of the best shot-blocking teams in the entire country. You remember last week in the Texas A&M game when Chris Beard afterwards said this was not a stat sheet game? You know, it was about heart and toughness and just doing what you had to do. To some degree, I think you would look at the final box score in this one and go, not really a stat sheet game. Because based on the stats, Ole Miss played well enough to win. Listen to these. Ole Miss shot 45% for the game, 42% from behind the arc, 76% from the free throw line. Those are winning shooting numbers. Unless you allow your opponent to shoot 55% from the field, 44% from behind the arc.
And look at those second half splits from Auburn.
I'll give them to you. 22 of 30, 73.3%. 5 of 8 from 3, 62.5%. 7 of 10 from the free throw line.
Yeah. And, I mean, when you get beat like that, when you give up 56 second half points, it's a lot of things. But I think something really stood out is the lack of offensive skill that Ole Miss has on the block. They don't have big men that can reliably score. And, I mean, I know Cisse had, 12 points? But those were all coming off of, or almost all coming off of lobs. Broom for Auburn, you can get him the ball in the block and he can go to work. You know, he can get you a bucket because he's got a multi-level game too. Made a three-point shot as well, so he can stretch the floor some, but he's skilled offensively. Ole Miss doesn't have a big with offensive skill that, you know, if your opponent's going on a run or whatever, that you can just, tell you what, clear out, dump it off to the big man, let him go to work one-on-one, he'll get you a deuce, and then you go back and play defense and do it again. Ole Miss doesn't have that guy.
And, Borky, your point about Janai Broom, you know how many points he had in the first half?
0.
Ole Miss held him scoreless in the first half. He had 15 second-half points.
Took over. Incredible. Just completely took over that game.
He certainly did. And Juju Murray may have had his worst game of the season. And it wasn't – I mean, he only turned it over one time, and he did have 6 assists, but he only had 4 points. He was 2 of 12 shooting the basketball and missed all 4 of his 3-point attempts in the game. And you're going to have games like that. And when you have a game like that against a really good team, and make no mistake about it, Auburn is a really good basketball team, you're going to get beat, even at home. And that's what happened on